Hey guys, I want to show you how to add mixed numbers and how to subtract mixed numbers. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to work on the fractions first. These are the fractions, these are the whole numbers. There's also integers here. Integers are like whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's just like the number line, but there's also negative stuff in it. So it could be like -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, right? It just keeps going on both sides. So we're going to have a couple of those in this video. So let me go ahead and start the setup because we're doing fractions first. I'm doing +2/6. Why did I decide to do a plus? Well, because it gave me one right here. That's how I know. Okay, cool. So what do I do after I set up the fractions and I identify which operator to use, or like which plus, minus, divide, multiply sign to use? I'm going to have to make sure that my fractions match up. I do have a video in my channel about this, about adding fractions and subtracting fractions. So basically, I call it the boot and hat method. That's what I name it. So I don't think anyone else calls it that. So if you Google it, I don't know if anything will come up. Basically, the boot and hat method for adding and subtracting fractions is you got to make sure the shoes look the same. So this bottom part is the shoes. So I'm wearing a 2 and a 6. I have to make sure they're both exactly alike. How do I make them alike? Well, usually you can look at the bigger number that you're wearing, which is a 6, and try to make the other one, which is a 2, look like the 6. How do I do that? Well, I could put a 3 here. I could multiply it by 3, right? And whatever I do to the bottom, I gotta do to the top. So what does that get me? It makes my new fractions 3/6 plus 2/6. Do you see how both of the shoes are exactly the same now? So now I can work on it. Now I could do 3 plus 2 in that top part, which is the numerator, which gives me 5. And then I could do a 6 at the bottom, which is the denominator. So that's the answer to my fractions. What about the whole number? I have 3 plus 1. Well, what does that give me? It gives me a 4. So what's my final answer? It's my whole number, which is at 4, and then my fraction I just made, which is 5/6. This is the final answer. This would go right over here as my final answer. Let's try another one. Maybe that was like, I don't know, did that go by too fast? Let's do a different one. Okay, so what are our rules? We're going to mess with the fractions first. I'm going to do the fractions here, and then what is my operator? Do I use plus, minus, addition, or subtraction? I think I said that wrong. Yeah, so we're using plus. We're doing addition. And let's see, what is my next step? I have to make sure I'm wearing the same shoes. So the boot and hat method is basically you can wear any hat you want, it doesn't matter, but your shoes gotta match. You have to make sure you're wearing the same boots, right? So I have a 5 and I have a 10. So what do? I have to make sure one of them matches the other. I cannot make my 10 a 5. I can't like subtract, right? I could only add stuff on. So how about we make the 5 into a 10? How do I do that? Well, I can multiply it by 2. We could try to do that. Whatever I do downstairs, I have to do upstairs. What does that give me? Well, I'm multiplying these together. That gives me a 6/10 plus the second part, which is 1/10. Well, it looks like my boots finally match. So now I can go out. I could go out and I'm going out as a 10 and I'm going out as a 7, right? Because 6 plus 1 is 7 and then my boots are the 10. So I'm done with the fractions part. Now we got to do the whole number part. So I have 4 plus 2. What does that give me? It gives me a 6. So my final answer is going to be 6/7/10. This is straight up my final answer. So here is an example of those integers we were talking about. Well, it could be a whole number, but there's going to be a negative in front of it. It looks intimidating, but let's just walk through it together. So what was my first step? I got to do the fractions first. Plus, right? I have 1/3, but we got to make sure to put that negative in. So that's what it looks like. which basically is a negative. It's just telling me to subtract. That's all it's telling me to do. It looks a little bit tricky, but that's what it's telling me to do. This and this is the exact same thing. You're going to get the exact same answer. So let's see. What do? I have to make sure that my boots are the same. How do I make my boots the same? The 6 is bigger, so let's see. I have to make sure that 3 looks like a 6. I can multiply 2. And whatever I do to the bottom, I gotta do to the top. So it's 5, 6, right here. And then the second part, you have to keep in mind it's going to be a negative, right? Because that's the setup that it gave me. It's 2 over 6. So what does that give me? That gives me a 6 in the bottom, and that gives me a 3, a positive 3 at the top, because 5 is bigger, so we're going to have that sign. So 5 minus 2 is 3, or 5 plus negative 2 is 3. But this is actually half, right? Because how many times does 3 go into 6? It goes in twice, so it actually reduces to half. What about the whole numbers? I have 4 plus negative 2. Well, we know it's going to be positive because 4 is the bigger number, and 4 is positive, right? So we got to copy that. And then 4 minus 2 is 2. So we know it's going to be a positive 2. My final answer is 2, which I got from right here, half, which I got from right here. This is my final answer. I'm going to try this one next. Let's see. I am going to do negative 3/4, right? I got the negative here, plus 7, 8. So let's see. I already got the fractions set up. I made sure all the signs and operators and the plus minus stuff is all lined up. What do I do next? Well, I have to make sure that my boots are the same. Okay, cool. So the 8's good. I got to make the 4 look like an 8. How about we put a 2 there again? And whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So what does that give me? Let's put this in a bracket. What does that give me? It gives me a 6 in the top right here. It gives me an 8 in the bottom right here. And then this I'm just going to rewrite. Perfect. So I have the boots right here. Let's not forget that negative that I completely forgot about. Right, what does that give me? What does negative 6 plus 7 give me? Well, we know it's going to be positive because 7's that bigger number. We already know that from the jump. So negative 6 plus 7 is going to give me a 1, right? So it's a positive 1/8. That's the fraction part. What about the whole number part? I have negative 14 plus 21. Well, let's take a look. I have a negative and a positive. So what's the bigger number? The positive. So I know that's going to be the champion. He's going to be positive. And let's see, 21 minus 14, or negative 14 plus 21 gives me 7. So what's my final answer? It's going to be 7, 1, 8. Is that a good 8? I don't know. There, that is the final answer. This is how you add fractions. It's pretty straightforward. Subtraction stuff is pretty similar, but every once in a while there's going to be a bit of a tweak to it. So let's try to do some subtraction stuff. There's a couple in here that's going to require additional steps. So let's see. I have my fractions here, minus 2, 8. Let's see. So I wrote down my fractions because I do that first. I decided which operator to use. This time I'm using a subtraction because it told me to do so right here. I have to make sure the boots are the same. It looks like they gave me matching boots. I don't have to do that step. I don't have to dig through my closet and find the matching shoes. They just showed up like that. Cool, perfect. So I can go ahead and solve it. I'm going to put the 8 in the bottom. 7 minus 2 right up here gives me 5. So I know that's going to be my fraction part. What about the whole number part? 3 minus 1. What does that give me? It gives me a 2. Great, so I know it's going to be 2, 5, 8. That is my final answer. Let's try this one here. Okay, perfect. So it's going to be 3, 4, and I have a half. I wrote down the fractions. That's what I do first. I'm going to put a subtraction here because it told me to do so right over here. And let's see, what do I do next? I have to make sure my boots are the same. The 4 is cool. The 2, that has to change. I gotta dig around my closet. I'm going to put a 2 towards it. Whatever I do to the bottom, I gotta do to the top. Let's make that equal sign a little bit longer. What does that give me? It gives me 3, 4 minus 2, 4. What does that give me? Well, 3 minus 2 is 1. My boot is a 4. That's my fraction. What about the whole number? I have 4 minus 1. It gives me 3. That means my answer is going to be 3 1/4. There we go. Bam. That's the answer. Let's try this one. This is a really good one. So here's the thing, right? I'm setting it up. I'm putting down my fractions. I'm picking out my operator. And now I'm thinking, okay, cool. Let me just go ahead and do the boot and hat method and I'm done. Well, here's the thing. This is why you have to kind of look really carefully. 1/4 is actually 0.25. Half is 0.50. This number is smaller. We got a smaller number up front. So that means I have to borrow, right? When you subtract, you know how you subtract and then if it's like a small number, you have to go over next door and take one away and then make it a 10 and you just keep doing that? I have to do that here. So I'm messing with this one. So I have 15, 1/4. I have to borrow to put into this. What am I going to borrow? I'm going to borrow the 15. So it becomes 14. It becomes 14 immediately. And what am I borrowing? I'm borrowing 4, 4. That's what I'm borrowing. So then this right here becomes 4, 4 plus 1/4, which gives us 5/4, right? So my new problem basically is 14 right now, right? And it's going to be 5/4 minus 6/2, right? This is the new problem now. So let's try to do that. I have 5/4. Let's just move that all over here. So now my new problem is 5, 4 minus half. I got it from down here, both of my fractions. I'm basically like starting over in a way. I got to make my boots the same with the 2. So I have 5, 4 minus 2, 4, which gives me 3/4, right? And now I have to figure out what those are my fractions. I have to figure out what my whole number is. Keep in mind we had a 14. We had to switch that up. Minus 6. That gives me an 8. That's my new whole number. So my final answer is going to be 8, 3, 4. That's the new answer because I had to borrow. So if the first number is way too small, you have to borrow, and that's the method in which you borrow. You basically take the whole number and you bring it down 1, and then you take the fraction you're having to like borrow from and then just add 4/4. Now, here's the thing. It's going to be like this bottom number, whatever it is, you're just going to throw it at the top. So if it was like 1/6, it would have been 6, 6. If it was 1/8, it would have been 8, 8. Let's try another one. Let's see. Yeah, this is going to be similar, so we can replicate what we just did. I have 1/8 minus 3/4. So 1/8 is smaller, so I have to do the same thing again. So I'm borrowing from this, right? Because this is the smaller one. So my 24 becomes a 23. And what am I borrowing? Well, I'm borrowing 8/8. So what does that look like? That becomes should I erase this little arrow? Okay, that becomes, I'm borrowing 8, 8, and I'm adding it to the number it gave me, which is 1 over 8, right? Which is 8, 9. That's what I ended up with. So this becomes 9 over 8, right? Now, let's start over. I have 9, 8 minus 3/4, right? I got the 9, 8, 3/4. Well, let's see. What do I do now? Fix that 9. I have to make sure my boots are the same. Put a 2 here, a 2 up here, right? So I have 9, 8 minus 6, 8. What does that give me? It gives me 3, 8, right? That's my fraction. What about the whole number part? Because I ended up with a bunch of weird numbers. So I had 23. It was 24, but I had to borrow minus 16. What does that give me? So I think it's a 7. Yeah, it's 7. It gives me 7. So I did 13 up here, and then that was 7, and then 1 minus 1 is 0. So my final answer is 7, 3, 8. That's my final answer. Let's try one more. If I can. I guess my screen froze. Yeah, so basically, we just borrowed, and what we did is we had to take 8 over 8 and add it to 1 over 8. We got that answer, and then we basically started over as if it was a brand new problem. I have this final answer, which I think is a really useful problem. Let's see, so let's set it up again. I have 3, 6 minus negative half, right? You gotta keep in mind that we have 2 signs here, right? So I have minus half. So let's go ahead and see what's going on. I have to add 3 to this, so it could be the same. I have 3, 6 minus negative 3, 6. Right? So what does that give me? Well, that gives me 6 over 6, right? Because if I have a negative, it's basically one of these. That's what I'm doing. So it's 6 over 6. It's not a 1, it's 6 over 6. And that's important because what's going to happen is, well, I mean, it is technically a 1, but I want to show you something. Let's see. So that's my fraction. I guess we could call it a 1. Let's call it a 1 as well. And then I have 102 minus negative 53. What does that give me? It gives me 155. See how we added those together? It was 102, 53. So that's a 5, that's a 5, that's a 1. 155. So what's my answer? It's 155, 6 over 6. That's a whole number, right? So it's becomes a 1. 6 over 6 becomes a whole number, which is a 1, right? There's an invisible plus sign here. All of those had invisible plus signs, so it becomes 155 plus 1, which is 156. This is the final answer right over here, because we had this that became a whole number. 6 over 6 is a 1, right? So that became a whole number altogether. I think that's all the examples I have. Okay, I hope this video helped. And I do have a sticker shop if you want to check it out. Okay, thank you everybody. Bye.